Support for Arkansas Week provided by the Arkansas Democrat-Gazette, the Arkansas Times, and KUAR-FM 89.
Hello again, everyone, and thanks for joining us for another special edition of Arkansas Week. Special for the issues we'll address, and because of that, we will take double our usual time, so settle back for the next hour. Two things have to be accomplished amid this pandemic. One is coping, not just physically, but emotionally, mentally. The failure to adjust and to help others adjust has real medical, physical consequences. That'll be later in the broadcast. First, the challenge of counting America, Arkansas included. Yep, it is census time as specified by the Constitution of the United States. The stakes for our state in any census are always high, very high, and rarely have they been higher. With us to explore that are Mayor George McGill of Fort Smith, who is chair of the Arkansas Complete Count Committee, and Shelby Johnson, who is vice chair and the State Transportation Department's chief geographic information officer, although in this context, he may be our chief demographic officer as well. Gentlemen, again, thanks very much for joining us. Thanks very much for being with us. Mayor McGill, let's start with you. I've had a swing at it. I just took a swing at it, so you're up at bat. It's difficult to underestimate, to underemphasize exactly how important to local governments an accurate and complete census is.
Steve, Arkansans must understand what we're dealing with. We're dealing virtually with the future of our state. If we believe in good roads, highways, if we believe in education the way we want to distribute it to our children, if we believe in our medical clinics in our rural areas, we must understand the importance of the census. All of these things that we cherish and believe are very important for our community, the resources we get from the federal government are driven by the census numbers. Therefore, it's crucial that we get our numbers. Arkansas traditionally has been known as an undercounted state or underrepresented. We can no longer afford that. We must be accurately counted.
Well, so what is the committee, either you or Mr. Johnson, what is this committee doing to make sure that if there is an undercount, that it is minimized?
The governor has tasked us with creating awareness. The legwork will be done by the Census Bureau, but our job is to inform our citizens the importance of the census and to get complete awareness in every nook and cranny, every city, every community in this state.
Yeah, Steve, I might add that one of the
Shelby
things
Johnson, yes, please go ahead.
I just was going to add that one of the things our committee has done is it's been a very diverse committee. The governor orchestrated that by purpose. We have a number of the Hispanic community represented on the committee, as well as Marshallese represented through Northwest Arkansas. And so a lot of the outreach has been to focus on diversity of the state as well, and making sure that all of those diverse groups participate and respond.
Is there evidence that it is succeeding, or will we have to wait for the pudding to search for the proof?
My guess is that we're going to have to wait. Historically in Arkansas, for example, our Hispanic community has been a little bit undercounted. And so you've seen, or at least we've seen, mayors and complete count committees that have formed up all over Arkansas. And one of the specific things that they've done is to include the Hispanic community and to make sure that, for example, faith leaders in the Hispanic community are reaching out to their congregation and making sure that they know that it's very important for them to participate in being counted.
Well, to both gentlemen, as we prepare this broadcast, you may have caught a break in the sense that the census hierarchy, executives in charge of the Census Bureau, have asked Congress for a 120-day delay in gathering and reporting data. That could make a huge difference, one has to believe.
I believe it will make a big difference. Right now, Arkansas appears to be tracking below the national average, and we must increase our participation. And I believe that the paper census document is going to be the key. Keep in mind, we're a rural state, and broadband access, all of these issues play a part in how well we participate in the census. So I do believe the paper ballot is going to play a major role in the numbers that we get. Again, everyone in our communities and our cities must take an active role in creating awareness and making the citizens understand the importance of taking the census.
All right, Shelby Johnson.
Yeah, I think the mayor's right on point. With this announcement from the census, having that delay means that the field operation, the enumerators that would be going out and doing the field work, they would be normally going out and doing that field work in June timeframe. And they're specifically going to those households that haven't already self-responded. So if a household has already responded, they obviously don't need to go there. It's going to be those places that haven't responded. And so because the field operations have been suspended for this time period, it gives us more time for Arkansans to self-respond. And for families that are where their lives and life order has changed a little bit and you have more time at home, take advantage of that time, use that time now, and go ahead and make your response. Participate and send in those forms.
Question for both gentlemen, and Mayor, we'll begin with you. Both of you have emphasized your attempts to reach out to every ethnic group imaginable in Arkansas. There has traditionally been concern, on the part of the Census Bureau and government officials, of an undercount, and two, suspicion of government inquiries. How, Mayor McGill, let's start with you, countering that.
You know, what we've done in our area, we've done PSAs with the Mexican consulate out of Little Rock. We did an extensive interview, and that's been posted. We have a large contingent of Latinos on our committee, and we've encouraged that around the state. People are interested in hearing the voices of those they trust. And we made a major effort in making sure those people are included in our conversations and on our committees locally.
Shelby Johnson.
Yes, sir. I think it's a very important point to drive home with our audience is that the census is private. There is a great degree of measures that are in place to ensure all of our privacy. So those responses that as they go into the census, that information remains private. It's secure. In fact, most of the census workers are made aware of the oath. They take an oath that information remains private, and it remains private for roughly 7 decades until at that time it becomes exposed for genealogists and historians. But securing that is a very important part of it, and that privacy is in place. And so that gives us a degree of confidence that, yes, my information is secure, and so it's important for me to go ahead and do my civic duty and respond.
Well, for those Arkansans, Mr. Johnson, who have not yet been contacted, who haven't been on the internet, who haven't received anything through the mail, haven't been contacted personally, what sort of information are you asking for? How, I don't want to say intimate, but how personal does the census get?
You know, it's really not as detailed as some may recall from decades ago, where there was the long form. The census itself now is only about 10 questions. Your name, your address, questions about the number of persons in your household, and then of course gender, the number of persons that are male or female in the household, and then the questions on race and ethnicity. And so it's a pretty short form, If you're able to do it online, it only takes about 10 minutes. And part of that's just getting the logged in part. And so I would suggest to Arkansans that if you have a smartphone, in this current time, we've seen school district superintendents be incredibly resourceful in assuring that their students could continue to do their learning. And so school districts across Arkansas have set up Wi-Fi capabilities for their students. And I think this would be a wonderful opportunity to take advantage of that, to use the smartphones or other devices that they have, use that Wi-Fi, and go ahead and respond online, as opposed to waiting on an enumerator to come to your household.
Mayor McGill mentioned just a moment ago that he and some of his counterparts and other officials across the state have produced some public service announcements to try to drive home the importance of an accurate count. And I think we've got one of those on tap now. Your Honor, this is from one of your counterparts, I think, counterparts in Northeast Arkansas. Let's have a look at that.
I count, you count, grandparents count, newborns count, and everyone you've seen today counts. An accurate count ensures how billions of dollars in federal funding gets distributed annually for health clinics, after-school activities, road repairs, hospitals, and hundreds of other programs. Shape your future and start here. Visit 2020census.gov.
We have some questions, Your Honor. Mr. Johnson, we've got some questions from viewers that are quite pertinent. If I fill out a census form, this question reads, if I fill out a census form about my family, does my wife need to fill out hers as well, or can I answer for the entire household?
Yes, if they're in the same house, if they're in the same household, if they live in the same household, then you can fill out that form for the entire household. If, however, that couple happens to be living apart, then they should fill out the form for the place where they live or sleep most of the time.
And one of the obvious questions is the undocumented in Arkansas, across the country, but we're talking Arkansas here. Do we count the are we required to count the undocumented?
We count everyone in Arkansas, not only citizens of Arkansas, registered voters. We're counting everyone in Arkansas. And a big issue is many of the people we're talking about being underrepresented are immigrants, those in low-income households, and people who don't speak English, or with low English proficiencies. But we're counting everyone. We're counting the children, we're counting newborns, toddlers. And so we want to make sure that we focus on these traditionally unaccounted segments of our cities and communities. Again, we count everyone in Arkansas.
There is, of course, apprehension among the undocumented that their cooperating with the census would result in their apprehension, their expulsion. Shelby Johnson.
Well, as I articulated earlier, that information remains private. And I might also add, back in the early development of the final form, which was developed in 2019, in that final form, the citizenship question is not a question that was added to this 2020 census. So there is no way for someone to even know whether you're a citizen or not. And so that information is another reason why we would want all of our folks that are in Arkansas to respond, because the citizenship question is not even on the census this time.
Another question from a viewer. Young people typically have a lot of things on their mind. Being counted in a census isn't normally one of them. After all, it only occurs every 10 years. What's your message to them?
Again, the message is the same. If our young people believe in the quality of education they receive from our state, if they believe in our colleges and universities, they should have an understanding of how important the census is, because a lot of those educational dollars come from and are driven by the census.
Yeah,
Shelby Johnson.
my response would be that at all levels of government and in the private sector, academia, K-12, just throughout every sector of our life, policymakers use this information to make decisions. And I think a key point to remember is that we only do this every 10 years. And so if we miss one person, that person isn't counted for 10 years. And policymakers, not only in Arkansas, but at the federal level, the national level, they make decisions based off of that information for a decade, Steve. A great example of that is this current event that we're managing. When you look at the decisions that are being made by our Arkansas Division of Emergency Management and our colleagues at the Arkansas Department of Health, they are making decisions off of census information from 2010. So it just underscores the importance of making sure everyone is counted.
There is, at what point now, if we assume that we'll have that census workers will have another 120 days, approximately 3 months, or 4 months, excuse me, to make this thing work. At what point should a citizen who wishes very much to be counted, but has not been contacted by some fluke, whatever fluke, at what point should that citizen throw the flag? And what should he or she do?
Let me first say this. For the first time in our history, people can complete the census by telephone. And if you have not received that paperwork, I encourage them to use telephone. And I think the amount of PRs is being broadcast nationally and locally. I think people have heard census. They've heard complete the census. They've heard 2020 census many, many times. What I'm encouraging people to do is to complete it. And so the paper census is going to come down, but I'm encouraging people to use the telephone or use internet and simply get it done.
Shelby Johnson.
Yeah, I agree with the mayor. The telephone, that's a great option. I think in thinking about the normal operation time frame, the normal operation time frame for the field work would be May, June, and July. And with the suspension now, that's going to slide into August, September, October, and on into November. I think if an Arkansan hasn't seen that form in their mail, if they haven't had an opportunity to participate, one other option that we hope will come back online is our public libraries in Arkansas. Our library system in Arkansas had great operation plans for people to come into the library and to participate. Our library staff were going to be ready for them. And so my hope is that as we begin to selectively and in a targeted fashion begin to resume somewhat normal life, that our libraries may be another resource where folks can come to on in the fall in, say, the August, September timeframe.
A viewer wants to know, gentlemen, if there is citizen or government oversight over the Census Bureau. Who is monitoring the process as it proceeds, as it goes forward?
Well, the census itself is a part of the U.S. Department of Commerce. So there is the congressional oversight and the budget and funding, of course, and the policy setting that would happen with census operations is governed by the census with oversight from Congress. One of the things that I've been very impressed with, at least in this cycle, is the Census Bureau itself has been very transparent. So, for example, they've stood up information resources where we can see the daily response as it flows in and compare Arkansas's response rate to other states. So there's been a lot of transparency by the Census Bureau itself so that we as citizens could look in on that operation and see how it's unfolding.
Mayor?
I think he's put that very well. And so with that, I don't think there's anything else to add.
I guess we've just got a couple of minutes remaining, gentlemen. I'll give you one more swing at the pinata here. We're talking about billions, not millions, but billions of dollars over the next decade that will be apportioned to the states. Well, trillions, I guess, to all the states, but certainly in terms of Arkansas, we're talking about billions of dollars that will be apportioned and that the state could be losing out on for any number of purposes, any number of funds, if this count isn't as fully accurate as it can be. Mayor, you got to make a budget work.
Steve, we estimate that a 1% undercount is worth $1 billion. All of our elected officials, all of our community leaders, they must spend the energy to get the awareness out and get the understanding out of how important this thing is. Keep in mind a $1 billion impact due to a 1% undercount. That is over the course of a 10-year period.
Right. Shelby Johnson, last
Yeah,
word.
the mayor nailed it. It is a huge budgetary impact, and that's not just state government. That's city government, county government, and then other services. When you think about the various federal programs that provide assistance to Arkansans, those dollars and those persons, they matter. And I guess I would parting shot would be this is a patriotic and civic duty that's hardwired into our Constitution. It ensures that our democracy works by equal representation. And so you just can't underscore the importance of rallying around the cause to participate in being counted.
Shelby Johnson, Mayor McGill, thanks very much, gentlemen, for being a part of the program and for giving us a better sense of what's at stake here in the census. Gentlemen, again, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And we'll be right back. And we are back. Social distancing, smart. Social isolation, threatening. It's the second epidemic, isolation, made worse by the coronavirus. Loneliness, depression, despair, and the behaviors that can result, angry, irrational outbursts, a temptation to substance abuse, or threats to addiction recovery. Already we know that social isolation, the absence of routine human contact, is a serious threat to our elderly, but it can afflict and damage those for whom that first social security check is decades distant. Perhaps you're living paycheck to paycheck, and that paycheck is no longer there, and government assistance is the only economic lifeline. Or on a fixed income that may soon not be as fixed as it has been. Or maybe you're affluent but have no safe way to enjoy its advantages. And if you're now away from your usual workplace and toiling from home, the absence of normal interaction with colleagues is wearing thin. And of course, like tens of thousands of Arkansans with youngsters whose classroom is now the kitchen, you're faced with not only the daily challenges of work and homemaking, but the schooling of your children. Joining us, Dr. Jennifer Dillaha of the Arkansas Department of Health, and Dr. Nihit Kumar, assistant professor of psychiatry at the University of Arkansas for Medical Sciences. Doctors, thank you both very much for being with us. Dr. Kumar, let me begin with you. What is at the top of your list of concerns as the nation, indeed the world, more or less stays in?
Right. Well,
shelters in place.
It's really the change in culture. Everyone is getting used to the new normal now. And a lot of people, especially with pre-existing difficulties or poor coping skills, are having problems adjusting to this new culture shift. We are all living in a new world now.
Dr. Dillaha?
Well, I think adjusting to uncertainty. I think that's one of the things that people are struggling with right now. We don't know how long this pandemic will last. We don't know how long we will need to socially isolate. And we have some guesses and some ideas, but people may be struggling with what's realistic, what to anticipate.
Dr. Kumar, I was, well, both of you, I trying to do a bit of homework for this segment, and I just entered a couple of key phrases in a search engine, and I have to say, not unexpectedly, I was smothered within seconds by all manner of articles regarding the impact of this on the human psyche. And it can, in fact, invite or at least enable all manner of pathologies here. Dr. Kumar?
Yes, so this impact that we talk about can be visualized as sort of a traumatic stress for everyone. And everyone deals with this kind of stress in different ways. There are physical symptoms, there are emotional symptoms, there are changes in people's cognitive thinking and abilities, and also effects on their mental health. And so, yes, there's a lot of these changes that is happening, and it can certainly be very difficult for people to deal with.
Yeah, it is the uncertainty, as Dr. Dillaha mentioned, that seems to be driving the apprehensions and the anxieties of so many.
Yes, for sure. This is a situation that is unprecedented. And it also seems at the same time that it's temporary. Again, as Dr. Dillaha said, we don't know how long this is going to last. And that's creating a lot of, really the uncertainty around this whole situation, where people don't know if they should move on with their lives, if they should continue with the same patterns of life that they're living right now. And it's creating a lot of stress.
There is such a thing as telehealth. Now, is that effective in anxiety disorders or just cabin fever?
Yes, there is a lot of research on telehealth. In fact, telehealth is something that's been going on for decades. We have been using telehealth, in our setting, in our clinical setting, as well as across the country. Personally, there's a lot of characteristics that make telehealth sometimes better or sometimes a little worse than in-person evaluations. It kind of depends on the characteristics of the provider as well as the patients. We try to triage people who will do well in-person visits versus some who can do better on telehealth. But we also have to consider the realities of the situation right now. So as of now, we are doing a lot of telehealth for not just anxiety disorders, but for a variety of other disorders.
Well, and a viewer wants to know if health insurance doesn't cover telehealth services, are there other options available, both doctors?
So for telehealth, a lot of health insurances do cover them. They have also started to cover just telephone consults. So not a video, but just a telephone consult is also covered by insurances. So that may be another option.
Yeah, Dr. Dillaha?
Well, there has been a lot of discussion about changes in health policies to support that kind of work, because this is something that will be ongoing for a while. And I think that people should check with their insurance if they have it, and they should check with providers to see what community resources are available.
Do we know of some hotlines where people can call free of charge and where that would not, and just talk to another human being or perhaps work through an emotional difficulty?
So UMS has a hotline that you can call. It's on the UMS website. I know that NAMI, National Alliance on Mental Illness, also has a hotline that people with mental illness can call, and it's all free of charge.
Well, just it's better than nothing. Obviously, Zoom, as we are employing to bring this program to the air, and any number of other social networks, cyber networks, can obviously have some beneficial impact, at least in the reaching out and reminding one another that we're alive. Dr. Dillaha?
Well, I agree that sometimes the best therapy is just human connection. And people have new ways now of maintaining those connections with people they love. They can do it electronically, but even just old-fashioned letter writing is a very good option for people who want to connect with others and stay in touch. That also can be beneficial to people's mental health.
And to add on to that, we keep talking about social distancing. I mean, it's all over the media. Personally, I feel that what we are actually needing to do is physical distancing. We actually need to be socially more connected together.
Well, when that is difficult to achieve, such as at the moment, the absence of physical exercise can really be a complicating factor as well, can it not, gentlemen? Doctor?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, exercise has shown to have benefits on mood, sleep, and a variety of other things. So a lack of exercise can certainly have a big impact, a negative impact. But when I look at exercise, I don't always mean going to the gym or working out in groups. You can exercise inside your home. You can jump around, you can run around, you can do a lot of things to get your heart rate up. And that's really what exercise is.
Dr. Dillaha, you have a regimen like that?
I have fallen off my regimen during this time, but I do find great benefit in stretching and what used to be called calisthenics, the in-place strength training. People can use whatever they have at home. They can use canned goods for weights, and they can use other options such as stretch bands if they don't have equipment at home. And there's things that people can order online if they want to work on their regimen. This is a great time if people are staying at home to develop new habits and learn new things.
People who do not ordinarily work at home now are working at home by the hundreds of thousands, probably even the millions. That has to upset the normal balance of home and office. Any
Yes.
advice for how to deal with that?
Well, let me say that when you work at home, if you're not careful, you never leave work. So I think it's important for people to establish a routine so that they can get up and dress and do what they need to do throughout the day, but have some boundaries about when they're at work at home and when they're not work at home, so that they're not feeling as if they're constantly working and don't get time off.
Doctor, that could just in terms of pure human relations, even spouses, significant others who are madly in love with one another or who thought they were last December, here it is in April, and they're starting to get on one another's nerves. What's the antidote?
I would say two things. One is gratitude. People need to work on their gratitude lists about each other and about the situation. There's good evidence that expressing gratitude can improve mood and perception of the situation and lead to improved happiness. The other thing that I would add is humor. And I would say that people can engage in humor online or watching funny movies. The American Film Institute has a list of the 100 most funniest movies. So I would think adding humor to the situation would make a big difference.
And to add
Kumar,
on to
I can't
that,
imagine you. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, and to add on to that, I would say that a lot of times having those boundaries help, like Dr. Dillaha said, and you can even stagger those. Like you can work for 2 hours and then have a period of relaxation or distraction, connecting with your family, and then essentially go back to work for 2 hours. So staggering your day and having some sort of a structure between a work time and an off time would also help.
Okay, any number of thousands of Arkansans obviously have at home. They have toddlers, they have tots, they have adolescents, and it can be a pretty spooky time for those young, well, for everyone, but particularly for the very young. How should we counsel our kids?
There's a lot of resources online about counseling kids. Kids with depression or ADHD, for example, who need a lot of space to around. Again, going back to the very basics, setting good expectations, reminding them what's going on in a developmentally appropriate way, and having a structure for the day for them, making sure that they're productive, they're doing something with their times and not just having, unstructured activities can really help kids stay on task.
Dr. Dillaha?
Well, I would say that is very important to have some structure and routine so children know what to expect. But I also feel that affection for children is very critical at this time. When children are under stress, they will act out, and it will be easy for parents to struggle for how to manage that. But there's, no parent is going to be 100% perfect in how they handle things. But if children know you have affection for them, that you love them, that you like them, then that can cover a whole lot of stress and anxiety for those children.
There can hardly be a more stressful situation, one imagines, than being at home, socially distancing, remaining at home with an abusive partner. What do we do? This is a special peril in situations like this, is it not?
It can be particularly difficult for people who are in abusive situations because they're isolated at home. And one of the things they can do is they can still access the services to keep themselves safe. For example, they can still text or call people or connect with loved ones electronically if they feel like they are in danger.
Dr. Telehealth.
I think that this is a time when increased stress could lead to increased abuse. And it's really difficult sometimes for people who are being abused to take steps to get out of this situation. But, those services, the essential services, police and other forms to help people escape this situation are still available. And people should consider taking choices to get out of the home, get the children out if you need to, because there are not going to be there's not going to be an improved situation for a while with regard to this stress due to the COVID-19. So if people are in danger, I strongly encourage them to get help and to protect themselves.
Is there, doctors, is there a single, say, internet source where an individual can go on a city by city or county by county basis, an index of support services, get taken contact? Mental health resources especially. Dr. Kumar?
So SAMHSA has a treatment locator, and people can just Google SAMHSA treatment locator and put in their zip code, and it can give you a list of mental health and substance abuse resources. And of course, they can look through county by county. I think the Department of Health may have some sort of a list for resources, and I'll let Dr. Dillaha answer that.
Sure. Doctor?
So I do not know those resources off the top of my head. I think it would be great to be able to add them to this, but I don't know them off the top of my head.
There is great concern, of course, in the recovery community for those who are in 12-step programs for alcohol abuse, for drug abuse. Their meetings are not, meetings are considered essential to maintaining a clean and sober status. And suddenly those meetings are not nearly as feasible, not nearly as plentiful anyway, in person, face to face as they were. What are the options available now? We go to the Zoom again, or the internet, or just the phone?
Yeah, Zoom seems to be the miracle cure for everything today. Yes, a lot of those meetings are moving online. A lot of those meetings are being held by Zoom or other platforms online where people can still attend. And the list of those meetings, I don't recall the source right now, but if you go online and search for meetings, online meetings, you can still find 12-step and AA and NA meetings online.
Yeah. Dr. Dillaha, the pressure would seem to be especially high in the recovery community for options.
Yes, that is the case. So Alcoholics Anonymous and Al-Anon, which is a support group for family and friends of alcoholics, are all out there. They're available. There's ways to find those lists of meetings online, and all of them have someone listed as a contact for those meetings. So they're findable, and you can call those contacts, and then they can tell you how they're meeting. I know many of them are meeting online. They're not meeting in person, but they're staying connected, and they would be very happy to include anyone that would like help.
We have a question from a viewer who wonders how he or she can possibly stay current with public policy or with news, if they get general news, and not be overwhelmed by the amount that is being devoted to coronavirus. How can she or he stay sane and still know what's going on? You got to be kind of selective, I suppose.
So I have a couple of suggestions, is to locate a news source that does very good fact checking and follow that news source or those few news sources that you choose. Don't just indiscriminately look at news sources. And then the second is to limit the time that you spend. Have it at certain hours or certain periods of time, and then no more than that. It's helpful, I think, also to check certain key websites. If you're looking for certain data that you want to follow, you can bookmark those and check those. But to just indiscriminately surf or look at things online, you get a whole assortment of things that may or may not be helpful. But to me, it's more helpful to check certain news sources that you feel are reliable.
It has to be more difficult for those in urban or less densely populated areas to obtain the kind of emotional support they need, particularly when they may well be living alone. The rural population tends, after all, to be rather somewhat older anyway than the urban. Mm-hmm. Delivery of services, their access to services, even those with broadband, has got to make the problem or aggravate the problem anyway.
Yes, it can certainly be a problem in rural areas, especially when they're already disconnected. Even so, they still have a means to get healthcare delivery and have access to other resources. A lot of healthcare has moved to online platforms. And so I would recommend that people still look for those services, but just in a different format. If there's other needs that they have in terms of resources, some of those resources still exist. It's not like people have stopped working. So they can still call those places and figure out what's the new way of accessing those resources.
Yeah, Dr. Dillaha, would you add to that?
Yeah, I would like to add that, it is true that we have a lack of providers in rural areas as well as internet access. But I do want to point out that many churches, synagogues, and mosques, faith-based organizations are very good at supporting their members and members of their community. So when resources are not readily apparent in a community, people can connect with people in their particular faith organization or in the ones that they may already be part of. There are social networks where there are people who have skills that can help support them, and organizations that are willing to help solve those problems at this period of time.
Well, here we are 2 decades into the 21st century, and still there is a certain stigma that attaches to the request for the acknowledgement, anyway, self-acknowledgement that perhaps I need a little help emotionally, mentally. How do you fight that?
Oh, that is a really hard thing to fight. I think it would be helpful if everyone together could admit they needed help. Then there would be less less stigma for anyone who wanted to admit it but had difficulty.
And I would like to add to that,
Please.
people who you work with and in your family or loved ones or neighbors, people are really good at identifying if someone else is stressed. They can see certain changes in behaviors or other signs. And I would encourage those other people to check in with each other, checking in, making that human connection, and go a long way in the person who's struggling with their emotions, find help and find support. And there's a particular way to check in. You don't have to be hovering over them, asking them to get help, but you can still say, hey, I'm here to help. I'm here to check in with you. And if you're not okay talking about it right now, is it okay if I check in with you a little later?
And the research, doctors, that I have looked at over the last 48, 72 hours, certainly even before then, loneliness and anxiety, they can have a profound impact on physical well-being as well. The death rates, so I read for some recent studies indicate, the death rate from coronary or from stroke, other ailments, is as much as 30-40% higher among those who lack human contact. The core problem there would appear to be loneliness, isolation.
Yes, I think that is a genuine problem, and there are ways of solving it. I have one friend who was very lonely and decided to get a cat. So there's ways that we can self-nurture ourselves and take care of our health. Minimum things of eating right, exercising, staying connected, but taking care of ourselves. We're so used to taking care of other people sometimes that we lose the priority of taking care of ourselves.
And to add on to that list, like you said, regular exercise, as we talked about earlier, could go a very long way. Sleep is essential. Sleep is very, very important. And a lot of people, given the amount of uncertainty and stress that's going on, they're finding it very hard to go to sleep and stay asleep. And so a lot can be done to maintain that good sleep routine, which can also help reduce the rates of physical ailments.
Yet it would appear that the telephone, the internet, maybe a bit of vitamin D, which we haven't mentioned, by the way. A couple of viewers have said, what about the vitamin supplements as a way to combat the stress of self-isolation? Any research on that that's valid?
I don't believe there has been any new research on that in the past couple of months that I have seen. But of course, there's evidence that some of the vitamin supplements may help. Of course, if you take any vitamin supplement, you have to be careful of its interactions and side effects. But in general, melatonin a little bit for sleep could help if people have a sleep phase problem. Sometimes other supplements help with other things, but you just have to probably consult with your healthcare provider before you start a new supplement.
Yeah, doctor, time to address the pharmacological aspect of it, over-the-counter or prescription.
Well, I would like to say something. It's very common for people to treat themselves with anxiety with alcohol or other substances. But those substances and the alcohol could very well turn around and bite you in the back. So we do want to encourage people to use healthy alternatives to those kinds of treatment. So people should be good to themselves, and they should take care of being with people they love if they're at home, or reaching out to people that they love if they're not at home. I think those are more important than anything people can eat or drink. Those are important, but it's the human connection which is going to be the real vitamin for people to survive this.
I suspect, Dr. Kumar, you'd concur with that diagnosis.
Absolutely. And there are urges, believe me, there are urges when people are at home about food or binging on calories. And, it's just having a structure not just for their day, but for their behavior patterns will also help. So having a good sleep routine, having a good exercise routine, eating good diet and healthy diet, all of that will add, it'll go a long way and add on to people's health and their emotional health.
Dr. Kumar, Dr. Dillaha, it's been a wonderful conversation, and hopefully we've gained some insights into how we should handle ourselves and our loved ones during this time of pandemic. We want to thank you very much for being part of the program.
Thank you so much for
And
having me.
we hope you'll come back soon.
Oh, yes. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, doctors, once again, and to our audience. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next week.
Support for Arkansas Week provided by the Arkansas Democrat-Gazette, the Arkansas Times, and KUAR-FM 89.